So it's back to school week, and in Wisconsin, nearly 50,000 kids are returning with vaccine exemptions, meaning they can go to school without getting all of their shots. Meanwhile, in 2019, measles cases in the U.S. reached their highest level in 27 years, and now some people are questioning whether anti-vaccine beliefs are to blame. NBC's Dasha Burns talked to a pediatrician who's actually worked with people skeptical of vaccines.
We're seeing outbreaks of diseases that we eradicated. There are people questioning decades and decades of scientific research.
The problem is information overload. You go on the internet and you read people who claim to be experts who have very fringe beliefs that aren't backed up by science. And what's a parent to believe? How do they know how to filter through all this information?
Give me a lay of the land of this area. How common is some sort of vaccine skepticism or hesitancy?
7.5% of the kids entering kindergarten in the state of Oregon had a vaccine exemption for at least one vaccine. National average is about 2.5%.
What is the responsibility of the medical community?
What we want as pediatricians is to protect the children. So let's ask the question, does the MMR cause autism? Study after study says the answer is no. At some point, we need to move on so we can try and find what does cause autism.
In a world of so much information, what is it that cuts through to people?
Telling them stories. When I tell the story of the family that I took care of whose baby died of whooping cough, it's a real reaction. I'll never forget the family. I'll never forget the room that they were in. And that baby didn't need to die. It was preventable. These diseases that we talk about are not just in a textbook. And so if I can partner with the parents, they can see that my concern is not making a buck, it's not doing something for big pharma, it's doing something for this child, for their child, that they care so much about.
What do we do about this?
What we do is we learn to tell a better story. We learn to connect with people, we learn to listen. We get our vaccination rates back up to the point where we stop seeing outbreaks. But when we have 7.5% of our kids in the state who have a vaccine exemption, we start to see outbreaks again. As much as we'd like to allow people to do whatever they want, whenever they want, it's a public health concern. You know what, for about the last 10 years, I've been out having this conversation with medical providers. How to talk to families. How to listen in a way that people feel heard. That's not taught in medical school.
Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Where do you see all this heading?
My hope is that people will learn from their mistakes and they'll see what happens to people who get measles, which is a horrible thing to say. I didn't ever want somebody to have to get measles for people to be scared of measles again. I wanted people to believe us that measles was really, really bad. I don't want to go back to the pre-vaccine days. I have to maintain hope that things will get better.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.